I really appreciate you coming this morning to this meeting, this all-hands meeting. We started this tradition in 2022, and this was the idea of my great Chief of Staff, Tondra Day, to have these meetings. And obviously we have the State of the University Address, which is a really important meeting. I think of these all-hands meetings as more of like the team meeting, the internal meeting, to get us all on the same page about where we are and where we're going together. And I appreciate you coming to this one today, because obviously this is my first team meeting as interim president. You know, you have those worries of throwing a party and no one shows up. So great to see the smiling faces today. And we're going to do a little bit different today. I'm going to just talk mostly about my vision rather than having a panel format. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. And we've got the whole team here who can help me answer the questions that I don't know the answer to. So. As you know, I was named the interim president by the Board of Regents at a meeting about 2 weeks ago, and I'm incredibly proud and honored to serve in that position for the institution where I've spent my whole career. I think everybody knows I arrived here in 1992, full head of hair, and my lovely wife here who can stand up so you can meet my wife, Nancy Heavey. So we were two young educators coming to what we called California adjacent to flee the cold weather of Michigan, and we've loved it here ever since. And I've lived here far longer than I lived anywhere else in my life, and this is where we will finish our lives here in Las Vegas. So I want to just say to you that it says interim in front of my title, and I was honored to get that title. That's what the board can do, is they can appoint an interim or an acting after they have a resignation, and they gave me interim title, which means I'm eligible to be considered for the permanent position after 1 year, and it's my intention to serve in this position for as long as they will have me. Regent Brager said, how long you want to do this for? And I said, at least 10 years, and she said, thank goodness, because we could use some stability in that position, and I will definitely be here. I'll be here for as long as you'll all have me. The board obviously makes those decisions, but they care about what the campus says. And so as long as I'm adding value, I will be excited to serve in this role. So as a team meeting, the goal is to kind of think about where we're at, where we're going, and to get us all on the same page and alignment. I think of us as a big system that needs to work in close coordination in order to achieve our important mission. And so it's worthwhile to start with our own vision and our mission statement. And I think these things are inspiring, and I think we don't talk about them enough. So our vision is changing the lives of our diverse students and transforming our communities through education and engagement. And I think those are really powerful words to think about what we do. And so I hope you'll remember those words. The mission statement's a lot longer. I won't read the whole thing, but it's worth, if you have a minute, to take a minute to read it. It's on the About UNLV page, and you can find it there easily. And hopefully you'll see yourself in that mission statement, and you'll see the work that you do and how it's connected to our overall mission. I want to underline diverse students, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the talk at different points. I want to be clear that human beings are diverse. We come in all different shapes and sizes, and we are different in so many ways. And so when we say our diverse students, diversity is part of the fabric of humanity, and it's represented beautifully on this campus, and it means everybody. So we won't retreat from using that word, because it is the fabric of humanity, and people are diverse in terms of military status, ideas, gender, sexual orientation, all kinds of different things. And if we are a campus that wants to meet people where they're at and help them get to where they're going, we need to think about how to support all the different people who show up on this campus. And so we have an incredible military veteran service center that does great work supporting our military veterans. And that's just one aspect of the kind of diversity that's represented on our campus. We have a women's council that does great work supporting our female women faculty and staff and students. So we have lots of different kinds of diversity, and we want to make sure that we continue to support all of the different people who are on our campus. Now, I have a little pop quiz here. My wife was an elementary school principal, and so she knows the elementary curriculum, and so she might know the answer to this question, but I bet not too many people do. How many counties are in Nevada? The Vice President of Government Affairs gets the prize. She knows the answer. There's 17 different counties in Nevada. I would have never guessed that. I would have said 10 or something like that. On that graph, there are 17 lines that show the population of Nevada from 1890 to today. How many lines can you actually see? You can actually just see 3, right? You can see one, which is small, where Clark County was back in 1890. In 1890, there were 45,000 people roughly in the entire state of Nevada. There were, Mike Green tells me that there were almost no people here in Las Vegas, like 20 people here in Las Vegas in the year 1900, because this was a pretty inhospitable environment. But you don't have to work hard to figure out which line on there is Clark County. And it is an amazing display, I think, of where we are and how important this institution is to this city. I often say that UNLV is more important to its city than any other institution is to its city. Now, we might argue about that, but there's no doubt that UNLV is the anchor institution in Southern Nevada, in Clark County, is vitally important to catch up to that explosive growth. Because there's a bunch of doublings in there in the population of Nevada. And what that means is we have been racing since this institution started to try to catch up to the educational needs of this community. And the only institution that's going to provide the new doctors and the new lawyers and the new dentists and so many other professions, the #1 school of producing nurses in Nevada, all of those things is UNLV. So if you ever wonder about, are we important, think of this chart and think of what it means to produce more college graduates, because we don't have enough college graduates in Southern Nevada. And the 4,500 or so that we will graduate in this next few weeks will add to that percentage, but we are racing to catch up to incredible, explosive population growth in this city, and we are important to that mission, and everyone knows it. And so that's another thing that I want to say today. When you go around this state, the amount of love for UNLV that exists across this state is huge. People know that we're the biggest institution of higher education in Nevada. People know that we are the institution that is the anchor of the economic engine of Nevada, which obviously is Southern Nevada. And so thank you for being here every day to help serve that exploding population. It is vitally important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about achieving our mission. So if this is a team meeting, we have to think, how do we go about achieving this mission? Obviously, everybody knows their jobs, and you're all here as committed professionals who know what you need to do each day. We also need to think about our culture, and we need to think about one of the things I want to add to our talk about building our culture is one UNLV, is the notion that we are in this together. And that's like a slogan, but it's actually a pretty hard thing to achieve. And so I want to say a little bit more about that. And today I'm going to use a lot of pictures of athletes and our sports teams, because sports teams know about building culture. They know about teamwork. They know about what it means to be in it together. And so they are great role models for us. And I often talk about coaches too, because coaches understand that they're in the people development business, that the interactions that they have with their athletes are about making their athletes better, about teaching them how to be better at their sport. And so that is what we are in, the people development business. And it's hard work because people come in all different shapes and sizes, and we have to be thoughtful about it, how each interaction has that developmental perspective. And as I mentioned, my wife is a 32-year veteran of CCSD, the last 18 as a principal, and I've learned a lot from them and from her about what it means to think about that carefully, because they are, in CCSD, every person thinks about that every day, and they own those outcomes, some ways more than colleges do. because sometimes college faculty say, if they don't succeed, it's not my problem. I put it up there on the board, or I told them what they needed to know and they didn't do it. In CCSD, they don't say that. It is their problem. And the reality is, if we want to be a student-centric institution, we have to understand it is our problem. It is our responsibility to help them meet their goals. Now, the one UNLV idea, the biggest way or the most simple way I would summarize this is, if it's one organization within our institution has a problem, it's everybody's problem. If one institution needs something, it's everybody's problem to figure out how to get them what they need. And that's a challenging thing to live into, because there's no facets of our organization that are overstaffed. I was thinking about going to our cabinet meeting and asking the question, does anybody have too many people working in your unit? Does anyone have too much money, right? And the answer is no, right? We are a very lean organization. Skip Crooker, our great vice provost for decision support, has run the data multiple times about administrative spending at this university. Administrative spending is very low relative to our peers. Our dollars spent per graduate produced are very low. Our dollars per FTE compared to national R1 public institutions is very low. If we had the average amount of resources per student FTE as the average public R1, we would have $170 million more every year to spend. That's a big number, right? And just think what we could do with $170 million more. We might actually get one group to raise their hand and say, we have enough money or we have enough staff. But the reality is we do it on our budget. We've achieved our R1 status. We can be incredibly proud of it. We do make it work. And thankfully now, at least, we're paying our people better. We've gotten those great raises for the last 2 years, which is making us competitive in the marketplace to retain our best talent and faculty. And I hope you're feeling more appreciated by that. But those resources went into people's paychecks, and they didn't go into hiring more staff. I did stand in a cabinet meeting a little while ago and say, or a dean's meeting, and maybe a year or two ago when this was being contemplated, said, would you rather have higher pay for your people or more people? And everyone voted for higher pay. And we got the higher pay, which is great, but it does not come with more people, because we're still trying to navigate the challenges of swallowing the payment of the cost of living raises that happened. And so I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. Now, it's worth, we can't leave this thing without talking about this particular moment. And I've said a lot of times that I wished I would never have to, I was hoping I would never have to use the word unprecedented again after COVID, because we went through COVID and we kept saying this is unprecedented, and it all was. And unfortunately, we're back to using those words again, because this is a moment of change. It's a moment that we are really thinking about what it means to be a university and confronting the sense that not all people believe in what we do. Let's just be honest about it. In this election, this group that said, hey, we don't know that higher education is worth it, won the election. And they are putting that message forward in a very clear way, that they think universities maybe are overpaid, bloated, too administrative. And we have to lean into the question of, well, to what extent do they have a point, right? So for example, we might use the term speed of business, right? And speed of business is that's doing things. You ever heard anyone say speed of a university? And if they have, it's not a compliment, right? And so we have to realize that, look at ourselves. We had an EAB come and talk to the leadership team not long ago, and they said, the most dangerous words in higher education are, we're not telling our story well enough. Because when people hear that, they think you're just saying to them, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, we have to really look at ourselves and say, what can we do better? What does it mean for the speed of a university to try to match the actual needs of our community? What does it mean to be more nimble? We have to address the fact that DEI has become a bad word among segments of our country. And it's become, for some, understood as meaning undeserved privilege, too much focus on people's identity rather than their character or their performance. We obviously understand that those words don't necessarily mean that, but to us, they mean trying to give everyone an equal chance at success. And if you look at the history of higher ed, it is not a history of equal access. It is absolutely not. One of the things I've just picked up along the way is if you went to Harvard in 1940-ish or somewhere around there, and you looked at the average IQ of people at Harvard, it was 100. And what did that mean? So, I know IQ is a contested concept and those tests are imperfect, but what it meant was that the people getting in Harvard, it was nothing related to their performance. It was just related to who their parents were. They were taking in the broad swath of people who were wealthy. Those institutions have gotten better, but they still only admit people generally from the 95th percentile of parental income or above. And so institutions like that do not do that much to equalize opportunity. They absolutely do not do what we do to equalize opportunity. And so we understand that when we talk about DEI, we mean trying to bring people in to give them a fair shot at the American dream as it's represented in a college of education, college education, not the College of Education, which is also great. But we should be clear about that and think about how we use that language. And so we will be thinking about that as a campus, and I'm not going to answer this question today, but we probably, for example, should change the name of that office, because what does the Office of Diversity Initiatives actually do? I think what they do is they support cultural engagement. They try to engage people on the basis of important things that they identify with, right? Because we all belong to different cultures and we all have different ways of thinking about those things. And we need that group that supports people where they come from, but maybe we should change the name of it. And so we'll have to think about some of those things as a campus and find our way forward in this new moment. And lastly, research. Obviously, NSF and all the federal administration or federal granting agencies are really changing what they're doing, and that is creating some serious disruption. We had a LSAMP grant to increase minority participation in STEM disciplines that was started by Keith Rogers and Larry Letourneau, and they handed it over to me. I've been the PI on that grant for the last 4 years or so, and it got canceled Friday. Friday morning, 7:42 a.m., got laid off. It's over. And so what does it mean to pick up those people and support them? What does it mean to continue that mission of making sure that we're leaning into trying to provide equal opportunity to all people, regardless of where they come from? And what does it mean to create a research infrastructure if they're going to cap indirect cost rates at 15%? Research has always been an investment. It's something we care about, and it's central to our mission. But if they're capping the indirect costs at 15%, we're going to have to take a hard look at how we allocate those resources in order to be able to sustain that work. And so it is a moment of change on the campus and off the campus. We got a new leader. We've got some interim vice presidents who I'm going to introduce. And it's a moment of change outside the campus where we have to stand up for what we believe in and navigate this moment. And again, when you look at athletes, right, they say, hey, if it's bad weather, they play, right? They go on and they play that sport. They don't say, oh, I'm going to go home because, I don't like the temperature or I don't like the wind. They keep going. And so that is our commitment to our students and our mission, that we will navigate this time of some storm clouds and some questioning of our value, and we will get through this together, showing that we do add value to this community and we do add value to the lives of our students. And so that's our opportunity, right, is to double down on what we do. We know that we change lives. We know that we make a difference. When I go up to the legislature now as the new leader of Las Vegas, I meet people who came to this institution 20 and 30 and sometimes 40 years ago. And because of what they got here, they had amazing opportunities. We all know the stories of the people whose lives were inflected by what they experienced on this campus. And so this is our opportunity to show that even though some people question what we do, we believe in it, and we'll continue to try to do it even better to make sure that we are responding to this moment, not with fear or not with complaining or not with, you don't understand, we respond with, we are going to show you that we add value. That is absolutely our opportunity, and I know that we'll do this together. I have a metaphor of a cruise ship. Maybe it's not appropriate, I don't know. But it's one that occurs to me. And I took a cruise this summer with my wife, and we had a great time. And we got on that cruise ship because we thought the experience that we would have would be life-enhancing. We would learn things, and we would have fun, and we would make new friends. And all of those things happened on that cruise. And so I do think that it represents a lot of what's happening here. One UNLV. A cruise ship has to keep going regardless of what kinds of seas it encounters. And on that cruise ship, everyone's fate is fundamentally tied together. And on that cruise ship, the employees all absolutely do have a service orientation, right? There are no employees on a cruise ship who are grumpy. There are no employees who say, I'm too busy. Go ask somebody else, or whatever. They understand that they are there to serve the guests who have gotten on. And they also understand that whether guests are going to get on the next time they sail is a function of the experience of the people who got on last time. And that is all true of us. We need to serve our students. We need to keep serving them so that they see the value of what they're getting from their experience that they're having with us. And that alone will help us get through these rough seas. The other thing we need to do is make sure that we have enough fuel. Fuel is the money that we use, and so we need to steward those resources carefully, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because the last thing you want to be on a cruise ship on rough waters is out of fuel. If you've ever been on a boat sitting in a storm, you do not want to be there, right? Because then you are fully buffeted by the waves around you. If you got fuel and you can keep moving forward, you're in a much better condition. So that's my metaphor for the day, and you can turn it into a meme if you want, I guess. It's up to you. So as we try to navigate these waters, we also have our values that we've written down, and these things, I think, are guides to us and hopefully inspiration for us as we try to think about what comes next. Access and equity, excellence and integrity, compassion and inclusion, and collaboration and stewardship. And so I want to unpack those a little bit and talk a little bit more about each one of those. So everyone here knows that we are an access institution. It's totally part of the fabric of who we are. We are so proud of that, of being a place where many students wouldn't go to college if they couldn't go here. Every day when I'm going into FDH, or maybe most days when I'm going into FDH, there's parents dropping their kids off on campus at 8 in the morning, and I think their parents are driving to work, and then they're going to pick their kids up at the end of the day. That is inspirational, right? They don't have their own car. They're carpooling to campus because that's what works for them, and they're carpooling to here because they believe it will make their lives better. And so I know everyone here is proud of that Access mission. It's something we can be incredibly excited about and continue. Now, equity is another one of these words that's gotten to be contested. I think I understand equity as meaning as a recognition that everyone doesn't come with the same starting line. And that as an institution, we should think about that and think about how we level that playing field. My kids, our kids, had tons of college degrees. I had a bunch, my wife had a bunch. My wife is a graduate of UNLV, Master's in Educational Leadership from the College of Education, and all their grandparents and stuff had college degrees, and so it was like, you're going to college, obviously, and they did go to college, and they did great, and they had all the supports, and I could coach them. Go get an internship. What? Why would I do that? What does that mean? Go do it. Go ask somebody. Someone knows how to help you get an internship, and they did. And those things got them a great life that they're now leading as late 20-somethings. But not all the kids have that, right? Not all the kids come from those kinds of environments, and we understand that we should try to level that playing field. I remember the story of a student at the NSHE Diversity Summit in Reno. There's a young Latina woman who basically said her parents didn't want her to go to college. They said, go to work. We need you to help us pay these bills. And her high school teacher said, you've got the talent, you should go to college. And so she had to leave Las Vegas to be able to have enough distance from her family in order to be in a place where she felt she could focus on her studies. And when she spoke up at that summit, maybe, I'm not sure, 10 years ago, she was about to graduate, and I think she was coming to Boyd Law School to come be a lawyer, to make a difference in the world because of what she got from her education there and then what she would get here. And so I think that's what we understand. We don't understand it as unfair advantage. We understand it as let's level the playing field. And some of that takes compassion because our students come from tough spots. I remember the story of a student who at graduation said, I wouldn't have made it if Tim Gauthier didn't reach out to me and help me through a really tough moment in my life. And there's so many of those stories at UNLV where we show compassion to people that helps them get through it because these students often do have very tough lives and they're working. They're trying to pay for their studies, they're struggling, all of those things. And so we should try to be understanding, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here and saying that this is part of our value. And then inclusion, I don't know how anybody could call this a bad word. Feeling like you are welcome. I remember when I was teaching a first-year seminar, I had a student, who didn't come back. And she said, I called her, I reached out to her after the semester because first-year seminar is about trying to help students navigate college. And I said, hey, I see you're not enrolled. She said, I didn't feel like I belonged. She said, I wasn't sure if college was for me. My mother's a grocery. She was a grocery store checker, and so I said, and then she talked to her mom over Christmas. She said, this isn't for me. And so that was my failure, right? I didn't do enough to help her feel like she belonged at the university. And I hope she's doing great. A lot of people, there's many different paths to success. I don't want to say, that she's not going to have a great life, but if we want to help all those students feel like they're included, that takes some proactive effort on our part. And know that, again, I'm speaking to the choir and saying to you that inclusion is really important to what we do, creating that sense of inclusiveness. Now, we can't forget excellence and integrity, and one of the things that universities are criticized for is leaning too much on people's background and not emphasizing excellence. I have said to parents, thousands of parents, part of New Student Orientation, that college is a meritocracy. It's probably the best meritocracy that exists, and that students graduate with the record they deserve. And so we need to continue to focus on excellence. And R1, we got it again. Congratulations to us. NWCC, thank you. I often say we're R1 on an R2 budget, and that's something we all can be proud of. NWCCU accreditation, we just had our 7-year mission fulfillment. You probably read about this, and we didn't just do that, we crushed that. And I want to thank Kate Corrigan and Lindsay Cousins, who's around here somewhere, for leading that effort. We had an outcome there that is almost unprecedented, where we've got 4 compliments and 0 areas where they said we were not living up to our mission fulfillment obligations over 2 successive 7-year cycles. I don't think probably almost any other institution in the country has that record in the accreditation space, and that means that we are doing amazing things. I also want to emphasize our enrollment. We are winning the enrollment game in the state of Nevada, and you should be clear about that. So weighted student credit hours is the main metric for which the state awards dollars. In this cycle, there's 130,000 more weighted student credit hours in the state of Nevada across all of the NSHE institutions. 60,000 of those are here at UNLV. And that is an incredible testament to the work of everyone on this campus, every college, every program. And it means that we are going to be in decent budget shape because they're running the funding formula and the most new funding will come to UNLV, and that is great. So economic mobility, I don't have an exclamation mark next to that one, but we got to keep working on that issue because that is a key metric of our success. We are pretty good in that, but I think we can do better in that space. Having a service orientation, and I know everyone in this room today has that orientation. We got to make sure that everyone on this campus has that orientation, that we are here to serve our students and our community. Obviously, academic excellence, scholars, the programs, the quality of the graduates. We don't want to back away from that. Fareed Zakaria is a person I respect tremendously as a thought leader in this country, and he talked about higher education as being too, I think he might have even used the word woke, I don't know. Being too woke and backing away from the notion of academic excellence as being a guiding principle. And that does need to continue to be at the center of our mission. And along with it, operational excellence. How do we do things? How do we do things better? How do we adopt business processes that are more efficient, that help us do our business? How do we incorporate AI into the university's operations to empower workers to get more done? Because when we have higher pay on the same budget, we're not going to have more workers at the same time. And so we do have to become more efficient in how we do things. And collaboration and stewardship. One UNLV means you're rooting for the other teams at the university as much as you're rooting for your own. And that is really hard to do because you spend your days with a particular team and you see the needs of that team, you see the challenges of that team. You don't see those of the other team. I'm a marital therapist by training, and one of the things, I actually just saw a woman on Saturday night who's having her first baby, and I said, you know, hey, when people have their first baby, often their marital satisfaction goes down. And the reason their marital satisfaction goes down is because there's a lot of work to be done under difficult circumstances, and often people think the other person isn't doing enough. And when you add up the percentage of work done by each parent in a new couple, it will equal probably at least 150%. Because everyone thinks they're doing 75% of the work because they're not seeing what the other people are doing. And those are challenging things for new couples to navigate, and it's a challenging thing for campus to navigate as we think about things like resource allocation. So we're going to bring DRAM university-wide, and we're going to think about how we allocate resources across the whole university. One of the most impossible equations in a university is who has too much money when no one has enough, or who has relatively more when no one has enough. And so we're going to think about that, and we're going to try to navigate our way through that as a campus, rooting for each other. Now, I do owe you a budget update, and I want to say, and you might have heard me say this recently, we are in the best financial shape of any institution in Nevada by far, and it is because our enrollment is strong. And so we have to remember that. The core of our mission is recruiting students and re-recruiting students every day at every stop of our cruise ship at a port, that they don't get off and say, I'm not getting enough from it, it's not worth my time, because that is what's helping us. There's huge amounts of budget uncertainty, so if you saw the front page of the Review Journal today, it's made it clear that it's going to be a tough last 4 weeks of the session. They're $191 million short currently because of the new economic forecast, and there might be another $160 to $180 million in the education fund. So there's $300-something million or so that needs to be cut from current spending. The governor has said he's an education governor. The people understand the importance of what we do, and so we think we're going to survive this just fine. A lot of this does relate to what percentage of the raises get picked up. They currently are picking up 64-ish% of the cost of living adjustments from the last session. If they go to 80, we're actually going to have some breathing room. If they stay at 64%, it will take our enrollment growth money, will get plugged into that hole, and we'll be okay. So if anyone is spelling doom and gloom out there, please tell them it's not doom and gloom. There's no institution of higher ed you'd rather be at in Nevada than this one. And if you're looking around the country, there's probably very few you'd rather be at in anywhere in the nation than this one, because we're growing. Yes, thank you. Our resources come from the state, and so the state invests in us in order to provide high-quality educations to our students, in order to support our community. A lot of the money comes from the students, and Keith Rogers and I sat down recently in the student union with a group of student leaders, and you know what they talk about? They talk about the affordability. They talk about the fees. They talk about the challenges of paying for their school. And so we don't want to put more burden on the students to the extent that we can. So philanthropy is another key resource, and we really want to lean into that. We need to raise more money to support our students and to support our infrastructure needs and to support our athletics, because all three of those groups need more resources. And so we are in a community of great wealth, and we haven't brought enough of that money to this campus. And so Bo Bernhardt and I are talking a lot about that issue and how do we do it. And I also want to say, for people in this room who have the opportunity, please lead by example. My wife and I are going to announce some new gifts in the not too distant future at our next Foundation Board of Trustees meetings in order to give back some of the great wealth, or not great wealth, we're not real wealthy, the great life, in order to pay back some of the great life that we've had from this community and this institution. So buy season tickets for football if you can. Buy basketball tickets. Come out to those games. Make a donation for student scholarships. Buy a Rebel license plate, please. It helps students, and it shows the love of the institution. If you don't already have a UNLV license plate, take the hour or two and go down to the DMV and get that. I drove in behind a UNR license plate this morning, and their license plate is kind of aggressive, right? It's got, you know, that wolf on there, and it is not friendly at all. So ours is so much more cheerful. It just says UNLV, and it's got the beautiful red colors. And so if you don't have that, show your pride, and please get a UNLV license plate, and it donates a little bit of money to student scholarships every year when you renew it. So we want to lead by example in that space, and we want to leverage our community. And we have some real estate assets, and so we've got some big real estate needs, but we've also got some real estate assets. I think everyone knows we got that 42 acres that we bought to build a football stadium that didn't get built there. Now we got Great Allegiant Stadium, but we got to figure out how to leverage that. And so I'm working a lot with David Fromer and Elise Bunkowski to figure out how to bring those assets back to the campus so that we can get the new business building that this campus needs and start to shore up some of the other needs that we have directly on our campus. And lastly, in terms of stewardship, shared governance will continue to be an important part of how we lead. And I want to say that really want to talk to the Faculty Senate and our other shared governance structures about being partners in building culture. We need people engaged on this campus, and we need them here. The people who are in this room are not the challenge, right? Some of our academic faculty got used to COVID, and they basically, we don't see them very much. We need to bring those people back. We need to re-engage them in service. When the Senate is asking for people to run for Senate seats, they're often struggling to get people to be engaged. That is not okay. That is not the kind of culture that we want. We need all of our faculty, including our academic faculty, engaged in this campus as a vibrant place to be and a place where we do it together. So we're going to work on that one together. Just a few more comments on culture, and I won't go too much longer. I know this is a long talk here. Be present, and again, this is the group. A campus is a place that brings people together for the sake of learning, and the together is an important part of it. So we need people on campus. We want this to be a vibrant space that people feel the energy. When I come, all of us come to campus every day, right? Where would you rather work than on a college campus with all the young people and all the energy and all the people here with the passion to build their future? Let's get people to show up and be here. And we're bringing our academic faculty back. Let's remember that we're professionals. As professionals, that idea is a self-governing discipline, which means that we need to engage in professional development. I know that we have a great teaching learning center that often struggles to get people to show up for great educational experiences. Every other profession has required continuing education. We need to build that back into the culture of this campus. And I want to really applaud Debbie Arteaga, who's here somewhere. And one of the things, Debbie has she's done a couple really important things this year, but one of the things that I really appreciate that she's done is emphasizing that teaching portfolios need to include more than just student ratings of teaching. People need to be able to show what is the professional development. They should be expected to show what's the professional development I've done and what's the more in-depth process I've used to evaluate the effectiveness of my teaching. So we need to make sure that we earn that sense of being professionals. We don't just call ourselves that. You got to earn that, and we should be thinking about that every day. And obviously, we need to be solution-focused. People don't want to hear us complain. They think we are privileged, out of touch, ivory tower, overpaid, all of those things. We signed on to the AAC&U message I did for a constructive engagement, and it's a very reasonable letter to talk to the Trump administration about saying, let's sit down and talk. We understand there's some things that need to change on college campuses. Let's have that dialogue. If you look up in the Review Journal what the administration spokesperson said in response to that letter, it was not well received. They did not say, yes, let's sit down and talk. I think the word overpaid blowhards was front and center in that response. And so let's not be the people who are too much woe is us. We are not woe is us. We're not going to lay people off. We're not cutting people's pay. We have great jobs. We have mission-driven work. And so let's make sure we're solution-focused and we have pride and positivity every day in our work. I understand that there's challenges. I understand that there's difficult things happening, but we can get through these things together. And let's be like these athletes, right? When the athletes show up to a game, if something bad is happening, they don't get down about it. They say, how do we overcome that, right? That is the kind of attitude that we need to have. A few things on priorities. Student success always has to be priority number one, and we'll continue to work on that. Related to student success is workforce readiness. And I want to say that I was talking to one of our great regents recently who interviewed some of our students who she was trying to hire for a position, and she said their interviews were terrible. She said they were not workforce ready. They could not articulate how their degree had built skills in them that would add to the value that they would bring to their employer. And that is something that we need to own, that we can't just say, I taught them Psych 101 or whatever, and that's good enough. And so I want to also thank Nicole Hudson, who's doing a lot of important work in that space, and Kate Corrigan and Jake Thompson, who's around here somewhere. All three of them are doing important work in building workforce readiness throughout the curriculum. It's really important. As I said, enrollment, new and continuing, that's not just the mission, but that's the fuel. And it's not just new students. It's not just let's bring in the next biggest class, because we don't know what each year now is so different than the last year. With the changes that are happening in the federal administration, we don't know what that's going to look like. Let's also make sure that we're working every day to re-recruit the students that we have so that they are coming back to us. Our GAs have a lot of frustration about how they're being treated, and we got to make sure as a campus we're looking at the solutions for that. That's going to be very important for us. And I want to thank Alyssa Crittenden and Kate Corrigan for that too, because they're really leaning into how do we build better structures to make sure that our GAs have a way to be heard if they have complaints about how they're being treated without fear of retaliation, because that's a big issue that they are talking about. And obviously, we need to always work on pay, GA pay is always a challenge, but we've made some good progress there, and we are pretty close to national averages in that space, but we'll have to continue to see if we can increase the pay of our GAs. International students, tough space. Lindsay Gruber is doing great work, along with Kate Corrigan, to support our international students who are finding themselves on uncertain footing, and we continue to try to make sure that we're supporting them well. Las Vegas is such an incredible international city, and we want to make sure that we leverage that and we support that. We deserve the reputation of being welcoming to our international students. And it's a little bit challenging given the headwinds at the moment, but we will keep trying to work on that. Research and innovation. We are an R1 institution, and people understand the notion of research for the purposes of innovation. The one state that is an example of investing huge amounts of money in its universities recently is Texas. And it's been all about the notion of innovation and economic development. And so we need to make sure that we're continuing to do that important work. We need to address the safety and security concerns of the campus after the tragedy of December 6th, and we're continuing to make progress on that, perhaps not as fast as we hoped for, but we will not forget about that, and we'll continue to figure out how to increase the security profile of our campus in order to support people being here in person and feeling good about being here in person. Community engagement, right? UNLV exists for a public good, and so the work of Constance Brooks and her team in community engagement and a lot of others. Tamara had a great event the other day of community engagement celebrated across campus, so we need to keep working at that. Philanthropy. We need to bring in more money to support our students and to support the other campus needs. Right now, we're relying too much on just the state and the students. That wealth exists in this community. We need to get it onto this campus in order to support the vital work that we're doing. And I want to mention athletics again. We have a great athletic director. Why don't you stand up, Harper? We are doing great things in the athletic space. We have back-to-back bowl games. We have a great new football coach. We have a great new basketball coach. And so many other teams are crushing it. Women's golf, men's golf, men's swim and dive, Lady Rebels. I mean, Coach Lindy LaRock, you probably tracked her. She's amazing, and they tried to recruit her away, and I'm sure they offered her more money than we can pay her, and she stayed here because she believes in this place, this team, this community. And so we got to make sure we show up to those games. The tickets for those games are cheap. So try to come out and go to some sports games, support those athletes, make a donation to athletics, buy some season tickets. Let's try to fill up Allegiant Stadium. They're playing our alma mater. My wife and I met at UCLA. Let's see if we can get 40,000 people there for UCLA. 50,000 people for UCLA. All right. I already got people flying in from out of town. And I get free tickets to those games, but I also bought season tickets to both football and basketball. So I'll be giving those away to people. All right. Last slide. We're wrapping up. I know you've been patient with me. So new leaders, I want to introduce our new leaders. So Dr. Allison Netsky is our new interim vice president for health affairs and interim dean of the medical school. Dr. Netsky comes with years and years of experience. She was at the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine when it was here in Southern Nevada, and now transitioned to UNLV, and she's a great leader. She's a psychiatrist by training and brings a really calm demeanor to everything and a thoughtful analysis of what we need to do in the space to make sure our medical school and our vital relationship with UMC both move forward. Lisa Bunkowski. Elise Bunkowski is our new Vice President of Business Affairs and CFO, and she also comes with years of experience in the system. She was at TMCC and then came to us as the Associate Vice President for Budget and Finance, and so she's really well prepared to lead us in that space and has been working very hard to move us forward. Bo Bernhardt, who maybe needs no introduction but should get one anyways. Bo Bernhard, who has the proud longest history with UNLV because of his lifelong status in Las Vegas. And he, I think everyone knows, is our great new interim Vice President for Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement and President of the UNLV Foundation, and so is a key partner in bringing in resources to support this organization. And I also want to introduce Zach Miles, who is leading economic development, which is another key area of the campus, leading the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park, where we're trying to bring in some new resources. We've got some exciting new projects out there with potential Children's Hospital and potential film studio going in out there. So now just a few frequently asked questions. Boot. Why do I have a boot, and how long is it going to be on? That's the number one question. So I had a minor surgery on my foot, and I hope I'm going to be out of the boot by commencement or before. It's been kind of ridiculous, but I've been walking too much. So a little slower healing than I should have been. We talked about 40,000 students. We're going to just put the pause on that one at the moment, and we're going to do an assessment of what we think the appropriate number of students is. Bigger is better. For sure. Bigger is better. We should try to grow because we need more college graduates in Southern Nevada. There's tons of unmet need, and it will help our economic situation with economies of scale. So we are going to try to grow, but exactly what those growth targets are will be dependent on some things like what we think the resources that are available are, and obviously we're not totally sure of what the impacts will be of the federal changes on our enrollment for the fall. So each year is a little different, and now it's changing so fast. So we'll just say that right now we're thinking about trying to have reasonable growth goals, and we'll figure out what those are and say more about that in the fall. Merit and COLA, just in case you haven't heard, we're not going to have merit. We anticipate it needs board approval to not have merit. We think that's going to be on the June Board of Regents meeting to suspend merit for this year because we're still trying to absorb the large COLAs. The merit is only 1% of the total base pay, so it's not a big amount of money there compared to the big raises that we got. And we do not anticipate they're going to fund no new COLAs for this biennium, unfortunately, given the economic situation of the state. So sorry about that. We do have a number of interim vice presidents, including me, interim president. We're not going to launch any searches on those in the near term. We're going to take people into the fall. It's hard to hire some of these positions as interim while the president is interim. So we got great people in place who can do this work, and we're going to let them sit there for a while and do the work, and then we'll talk about this more in the fall or maybe the spring of next year. AI, I don't know what to say about that other than that answer changes every day, and it's probably just best to get it from ChatGPT. But we have some really good groups working on AI in the teaching space, AI in the administrative space, and AI in the research space. And I think that the model that we created is really useful by having working groups to lean into this and figure out how to guide other people. And so if you have questions about those things, we can connect you to those groups of people, because it's kind of like a community of people who are thinking about this in real time, because there's not any simple answer to this question, and there's not going to be because it's such a fast-moving space. And we have the great new Dreamscape space that has been developed, and we're going to use this as a real showpiece for the campus. In parallel to that, we have Andrea Fromm, who is leading the effort to develop a kind of comprehensive vision of immersive learning that will be broader than just Dreamscape. And so those two things will go together, and we'll be looking at setting up some classrooms where we can deploy immersive learning outside of the Dreamscape actual physical space, but we'll also be looking at how to utilize that Dreamscape physical space. It's a beautiful thing in the library, and we'll start opening tours for that soon, because that's pretty much ready to go. So thank you for everything that you do to make this amazing place work. I am 100% confident that the best days of UNLV are still in front of us, and we have already done amazing things. We have changed the face of this state for sure, and we are going to continue to do so in the weeks and months and years that follow. This place is important, everyone knows it, and we will come out of this chapter of change even stronger than we went into it. So thanks for all you do. I appreciate everyone who's here today. And so I think we have a few microphones around somewhere. Oh, you have some questions? We're doing questions online. How are we doing it?
We do have a couple of questions from the online chat. So President Heavey, you talked about how Las Vegas is an international city, and we want to make sure that we support that and that we're worthy of that. So how will UNLV stand up for our diverse students, immigrant students with visas and undocumented status, and also protect diversity programs?
Okay, thank you for that question. So we have, as I mentioned, a really great international team, and we have done a lot before this moment to build up what's needed to support international student enrollment and success. And Kate Corrigan has led this work along with Lindsay Gruber. Is Lindsay here this morning? Maybe watching online. And including that, the good news is we put those supports in place. We built them up over the last few years. And Lindsay Gruber is our Senior Director for International Programs. Close? Yeah, and she leads what we call UNLV Global, and has put them in a position where they've been really well prepared to support the students who have had visa challenges. We have to say that it's navigating a totally unpredictable situation, and so we did a lot to make sure that those students were okay when we learned that their visas had lapsed unexpectedly, made sure that they had the resources to get home to where they were coming from, and trying to make sure that they're able to finish their semesters and not have kind of credit loss and those kinds of things. What exactly is going to happen with that, I can't say, and I don't know if Kate wants to say more about that. It's complicated. We'll just maybe leave it there. In terms of all of our diversity, as we said, it's part of the fabric of our campus. We haven't made any, we have exactly the same group of people supporting students, student affairs, Office of Diversity Initiatives, human resources, all the groups that lean in to supporting all the students on our campus. And we'll continue to think about how to best organize those activities and maybe what we should call them to make it a little clearer what they do, but we won't retreat from supporting the community that we proudly serve. And if there was one other aspect of that, you'd have to remind me, but I think that's the overview. Okay.
And as a follow-up to that, diverse students want to see academic faculty who look like them. What is the plan to recruit, support, and retain those diverse faculty?
Yeah, thank you. So what I have always thought is the best thing that we can do to make our faculty look more like our students is ensure the progression of our diverse students through every level of this educational journey. And so we are the kind of institution that is capable of producing doctoral students who go on to faculty positions. And the reason that we don't have a faculty who looks like our student body is because historically, people who have come from more diverse backgrounds have not progressed to PhDs at the same rate. And so that is what we lean into, is trying to create the pipeline of professionals who we can hire back and other people can hire that look just like our undergraduate student population. And so one of the things we talk about, for example, is how does our graduate student population look different than our undergraduate student population? We want those things to match because it makes sense that, hey, everyone should have the same likelihood and ability to progress to those higher levels of degrees. And as we do that, we will make progress. We have also seen a faculty that has grown in its diversity over time, that we're proud of that, but we want to lean into the pipeline issue to make sure that everyone has the ability to progress through this journey. Any questions from inside the room? Oh yeah, I guess the microphones are in the middle of the room. So there's online people, so you probably have to go up to the microphone if you want to ask a question. They're right in the middle of the room, so just kind of go backwards. Yeah. Yeah, right in the middle.
Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Addison, Chair of the Department of Film. And I do have a question, but first, President Heavey, I just wanted to say that today, your talk was inspiring, and I'm very proud to have you as our president. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that. It's very reassuring in this moment of uncertainty. But my specific question or comment is about access and equity. I agree with you that the campus, I love to have energy on the campus and for the campus to feel very welcoming. But I also think that remote access and asynchronous access to our courses, those are very important tools for access and equity. So I think we should also be leaning into those for students who are living with disabilities, for students who may be pregnant or who have chronic illness, et cetera. I think those are wonderful tools, so I'd like to see us exploring all of those and embracing all of them. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Heather, and for your kind words. And I just say 100% agree, and we are absolutely seeing more students take online courses. Before the pandemic, we were about 90-10 in-person to online. We've settled now more at like 70% in-person, 30% online, and it's probably going to continue to shift. What it is we both have some fully online students, but we have many in-person students who take a few online classes, and now pretty much almost every student graduates with one or more online classes from UNLV. So we definitely want to continue to lean into making those options available. High-quality online courses, high-quality online programs, and Beth Berry and Amber Ford, Amber's here somewhere, are doing that work. So thank you for leading that effort. Any last question before we let people get on with the busy end of the semester?
We do have at least one more from the chat room.
All right, we'll take it.
The state forces us into a competitive framework with other NC campuses in Las Vegas. Is there a way to flip the script so that the NC campuses are collaborating and supporting each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so in case, people weren't aware of how it works, is the state allocates a pool of money for all of the weighted student credit hours, and then you get from that pool as a percentage of the weighted student credit hours that you offer. And so it does create, from a financial point of view, a little bit of a zero-sum game where your gain is someone else's loss. And that's unfortunate, and I've talked a number of times about how that puts a bad, it creates a little bit of a, as to say, I don't know if it's unhealthy competition is the right way, but it does create some competition between the institutions, and it would be better, and I have suggested, well, some people have different ideas about that, but perhaps block funding. CCSD is funded per student they serve. It's not carved up in the same way as it is for higher ed. And so that's something we'll continue to explore over time. I will say that in general, we do collaborate well with our counterparts. And so I know we do a lot of work to collaborate with CSN. It's one of our biggest partners, obviously our biggest source of transfer students. We also, I think, work well with Nevada State University. I think all the institutions work well together. So I don't want to make it seem like we're not getting along with our partner institutions. And the bottom line is we need every institution to be successful. Southern Nevada does not have enough people earning degrees at all levels. The community college does a lot of important work in workforce development and very applied degrees. They send a lot of students to us. Nevada State University is an important addition to this educational landscape, and UNLV will continue to be the anchor institution of Southern Nevada, the only research institution here, the only people producing doctoral degrees, and we're going to lean into that part of our mission and really excited about it. So let me just once again say thanks for all you do. We're going to have a few weeks here to wrap up the semester, and then we're going to have thousands of students walk through the Thomas and Mack Center, deeply appreciative of what they've gained from their time here on our campus that is attributable to everybody in this room and everybody watching online and all the other people who aren't paying any attention to this morning but still doing important work. So thanks for coming. Have a great day.